Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. So we have a great pleasure to host Ben, who is the head of fraud at Ru, who is also our customer at Unit 21, and we will have a short interview with you, Ben.
So let's get it.
All right. So one question I really like to ask fraud fighters is how do you got into this business? Because I feel like it's always a fascinating story.
It is because I don't think anybody like for me. I went to college, got my bachelor's in business and master's in finance. I don't think anybody goes, "Hey, I want to be a fraud fighter" when they go to college. And I actually started at a startup fintech years and years ago, and they had no fraud prevention, no fraud solution. And being that my background was business intelligence, finance, operations, they asked me if I'd be interested in taking over this dispute team. Took over the dispute team. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Reg E. I had to get up to speed on that really, really quick and get that team compliant and operating with Reg E and Reg Z. And from there, I started building out fraud solutions and building my own reports and SQL dashboards, and Periscope and Looker, and started catching fraud trends. And then they're like, "Oh, can you look at this compliance documentation?" So, in a short period of time, you're a compliance officer, you're doing auditing, you're doing Q&A, you're doing dispute auditing and all that. So that's kind of how it started for me.
Yeah, amazing, and I think many people here can relate because obviously there's no school for fraud, and there's no school for fighting fraud, and I think it kind of makes sense that we all start from very awkward beginnings, but when we advance through our career, it really shapes in very similar ways. So we start in very manual, like you said, like SQL queries, dashboards,
It was all
lookers.
manual. It sucked.
Yeah.
100%.
And we feel the pain that we truly need like something to automate that, and that's where we start looking for solutions, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the next question for you is today when you are involved in a fintech in a hyper growth company, what challenges do you see today fighting fraud?
The challenges that I've come across, especially in startup fintechs, those are in their seed stage and just starting. There's a couple challenges that stand out to me that we have to be aware of. One, of course, is the organization's challenges. Is they want to mitigate loss. They want to mitigate reputational risks. They want to stay out of regulatory trouble. But one of the challenges is I feel there's a failure of really understanding what fraud is and how do they fight fraud. They don't know how to, and so there seems to be this inherent what I call pandemic of, oh, well, let's just build our own solution in house, and let's just build it ourselves. And so you're spending years and hundreds of thousands of dollars of trying to build something that doesn't work. And fraud is changing and fast moving, and you need to be able to set up mitigation efforts, rules, or strategies to quickly adapt to those new fraud trends. And you can't do that in an area where you have to rely on your own engineers and you have to wait for them to build something out when there's off the shelf solutions that can do that for you. The second challenge too is what I've found a lot, especially in the leadership organization, is they start chasing metrics on your strategy. And how do we measure your false positives? How much money are we losing versus how much money we're spending? And so there's this inherent issue where if you don't fix your strategy first, you're going to chase your numbers. And so to get your metrics and your KPIs to align with your strategy, you need appropriate measurements there by getting that strategy fixed first.
Yeah, that resonates with me, and I guess as a follow-up question, what best practices are you using today, or even what advice you can give the audience today? Like, if you can give one advice, one takeaway from tonight, what would that?
Well, that would be one is invest in your people. I mean, don't wait till the fraud starts happening. Just like, oh, we need solutions. Invest in it now. Listen to your people. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges is I started just documenting my cadence of doing investigations and what I was learning and what I was finding. I have this funny kind of quick story about look for the yellow tiny house. And what that means is I was doing an investigation on an account that was suspected of doing some money laundering. Your typical cash in real quick, cash out real quick. And so the company had reported, $2 million a month in revenue or something like that. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense for the type of company they are. But there's not a data point out there that's going to say, this doesn't make sense. Look here. So I just Googled the address of the owner, and it was a little tiny yellow house in Florida. I'm like, oh my gosh, no way, this is legitimate. So I went and checked out the website, and this website was someone who took pictures for sport teams, and then Google gave me a notification that their security certificates were out of date. And the website looked like something my 9-year-old could do on Adobe Photoshop. I mean, it was awful. So just being able to take that information and say, yeah, this is 100% BS, and shut it down. We did, and it turned out that this was a person who was working with someone phishing them. They had fallen to some type of scam or something like that. Anyways, I mean, it saved us a bunch of headache, but being able to look for those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in general, looking outside the box. I mean, you shared a great story, but I heard a story about from a crypto company. They had a customer who they thoroughly KYC'd, and it was a elementary teacher, but they was holding $1.5 million worth of cryptocurrency, and this kind of doesn't make sense, right? So I think thinking outside the box, and I want to say also for companies, for fraud fighters, if you don't have an operational baseline today and you don't really measure how you fight fraud, it's a good idea to start measuring that. Measure your capabilities. Measure how much alerts can you handle every day. Measure how much time it takes you to handle each alert. The more metrics you add to your baseline, the easier it will be to you to scale, and it's easier for you to choose the right solution when it's time for you to move to a more automated approach fighting fraud. Yeah, so I agree with that. So I guess last question for you is, do you have any predictions for next year? Where do you think we're going with fraud?
Like the type of fraud that we're going to see? Real-time payments. We're moving that world where real-time payments is going to be the majority of all our payments are being transferred. So the historical way of tracking fraud, of looking for anomalies and historical spend, is just not going to be efficient anymore. We need real-time fraud detection, and it's going to hit hard within the next 2 years. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think Fed now is supposed to launch like Q3 this year.
2023.
So that's a brand new payment rail that will be introduced. And I feel like we're about to see what we saw in the UK 3 years ago when the whole country suddenly became real time and the fraud skyrocketed. So I think we're heading exactly in that direction.
100%.
I agree with you. All right. So thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you.